Today I'm going to share another real life story with you guys, and this one is about feeling left out in your wheelchair. How many times have you guys been super excited to go somewhere, been with a group of friends, been with your family, whatever the case may be, only to get somewhere or phone somewhere or find out that it's not wheelchair accessible? Super bummer, right? And then you end up feeling like sad for your friends that they're friends with you, or sad for your family that you are part of the family because you're in a wheelchair and you're making everybody's life, a pain in the butt. It feels terrible. You feel left out, you feel left behind, and it just feels crappy. So today's story is going to be about a time that I felt left out, and then I'm going to share some tips on what to do about it. Before I was paralyzed in a snowmobile accident at the age of 13, I never gave much thought to the things that I chose not to participate in. If I had the opportunity to go somewhere, I would make the decision whether to take part based on if I felt like going or not. End of story. It didn't occur to me that making the choice, having the choice at all, was a privilege. You see, when you're in a wheelchair, there are times you don't have the choice to go, even if you want to, with all your heart. Sometimes that choice is made for you by a lack of accessibility in the built environment or by nature itself. Grass, gravel, mountains. There are just some places that we don't get to go. By the time I'd been in a wheelchair for a few years, I got used to what it felt like to have to be left behind, to watch others go and do things I wanted to do. It sucked. And I thought I had figured out how to not let it bother me. And then I had kids. And watching your kids go places that you can't follow is a whole other story. The first time it happened, I was in the Dominican Republic with my family for my sister's wedding. My son was 5, and he wanted to go swimming with the dolphins. I was so excited that he'd chosen this activity. I couldn't wait to go and see the look on his face as he saw a dolphin for the first time up close. My husband went to get some information about the excursion, and when he returned to our hotel room, he had a look on his face that told me there was bad news. I expected him to say that there was no excursion, or that there was an excursion, but that my son wasn't old enough to go. But it turns out the bad news wasn't for them. The bad news was for me. There definitely was an excursion during our stay, and luckily Jacob was just old enough to go. But this was the Dominican, and the tour was not wheelchair accessible. Of course the tour isn't wheelchair accessible. The resort we were staying at barely passed the test. My heart sank. All I could think about was how excited Jacob was to go. My husband turned to me and said, "We don't need to go. Jacob's little. He probably won't remember it anyway." And for a second, I wanted to agree. It felt almost right for my son and husband to miss out on the experience. After all, it wasn't my fault that the excursion wasn't wheelchair accessible. My husband would totally understand. Even my son would understand. I could just tell him that we couldn't go because the tour didn't work for mommy's wheelchair. Jacob had heard that enough times when it was just him and I couldn't physically take him somewhere that he wanted to go. It could have been so easy to just forget about the whole thing and go on with our holiday. But then I closed my eyes and saw the smile on Jacob's face in my mind as he touched a dolphin. It was then that I had to make a choice. The first of many that I would have to make as a mom in a wheelchair, to decide that this was not about me, that the world doesn't revolve around me and my wheelchair, and that my family, and especially my kids, aren't in this wheelchair with me. I was devastated, but said, "Nah, you guys go." My husband saw my heart breaking and offered, "If you want to go, I will make it happen. I can piggyback you to the boat and go back and get your wheelchair from the bus. It's only a mile. I can do it." I thought, yeah, he probably could, but should I let him? Do I really want to make my son's memories of the excursion all about daddy struggling to carry mommy and then running back to get my wheelchair? Or me stressing out because there would be no wheelchair accessible bathroom that I could use? Or did I want Jacob to remember being able to walk with his dad, leisurely taking in the sights and sounds on their way from the bus to the ocean? I wanted to be a part of the experience so bad, but not if it was going to take away from everyone else's. I willed myself to smile when my little boy came into the room and said to him, "Guess what, Jacob? You and Daddy are gonna go swim with the dolphins!" He was so excited to go on a big boy adventure with his dad. It didn't even occur to him that Mommy was sad and felt left out. And that's the way I wanted it. I told him that I was just gonna stay back with his little sister and have a mommy-daughter day. The day of the excursion, I stayed back at the hotel with my sister, my parents, and my daughter, who was 18 months old at the time. I made my husband promise to video the whole experience and could not wait for them to return so I could hear all about it. When they finally did return, Jacob was beaming. He was so excited. He got to swim with a dolphin and even kiss a sea lion. He had so much fun. And I'm so glad that I made the decision to let him go, even if I couldn't. That was just the first of many times that I've watched my kids go and experience life without me. And it never gets easier. It's this strange mix of heartbreak and joy that comes with being left behind, wishing that your kids have the time of their lives, yet knowing you won't be there to see it. When you're in a wheelchair, this is just part of the package. And it's really hard. But just because something is hard doesn't mean it has to make you miserable. And it doesn't mean that you're a victim either. Steve Morbelli, in his book Unapologetically You, Reflections on Life and the Human Experience, has this to say: "There are times in my life when I've been medicine for some while poison for others. I used to think I was a victim of my story until I realized the truth, that I am the creator of my story. I choose what type of person I will be and what type of impact I will leave on others." In other words, we get to choose in any circumstance whether we will be a victim and project our sadness, frustration, and anger onto others, or whether we will choose to be empowered and create a story where we get to be a hero. I want my kids to think I'm a hero, and I never want to make them feel like they have to miss out on something just to make me feel better. But how do you be a hero in a story where you feel left out? By remembering these 4 things. Number 1, your family wants you to be a part of experiences just as much as you do. But if there's nothing you can do to change a situation with immediate action, and there's no way you can feasibly take part, don't make your loved ones miss out. Number 2, don't make your family feel guilty for doing things you can't do. Your wheelchair is not a biological trait that gets passed down to your kids, so don't pass on your limitations to them, and don't resent them either. Number 3, make the most of the experiences that you can be a part of and focus on making great memories. And last, be proactive. If something isn't wheelchair accessible, do something about it. Educate the person, company, or whoever's in charge about how the lack of wheelchair accessibility affected your life. Don't just go in and say, "It's not wheelchair accessible, this is bad." Talk about how it actually affected your life. Offer suggestions and solutions to them. Remember, humiliation is not education. If you want someone to listen, then starting with the negative isn't a good idea. Start with what you were looking forward to seeing and highlight the great things about the business that you want to be a part of. The world is more inclusive now than ever before, but it's still far from perfect. We can complain about the problems or choose to be positive and help create solutions. Next time you feel left out or left behind, remember that you get to help create the ending of the story. Make it a good one.